on. So I suspect we don't have too long to wait. The work on the statement, which will be delivered, of course, was done, lots of it yesterday. And now there we have the images of the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, at 42 years of age, the youngest Prime Minister in the UK since Lord Liverpool back in 1812. The Queen's Private Secretary and other members of the household, and Mr. Sunak's wife, who's accompanied him as well, they are ready now to leave the palace and go back to number 10. Whether Mr. Sunak's wife will be with him when they come here, I'm not sure, but anyway, we'll see.
Not as far to come as last time.
No,
we were
no.
travelling down from Aberdeenshire.
No.
And it's a fascinating moment, because in the 2 minutes or so it takes to drive back here, Rishi Sunak will be thinking about the biggest political speech of his life so far. I'm told he finished it off this morning. Such is the pace of this leadership campaign that we didn't even know for sure this time yesterday whether Rishi Sunak was going to be Prime Minister, but he has this short drive back to Downing Street now where he has to mull over those words which are going to be so important in defining his premiership. As I say, I would expect him to address the seriousness of the economic situation. I don't think it will be particularly celebratory, as we've seen from some Prime Ministers in recent years. I think he will want to strike a more sombre tone and try and set out what he will pitch as some of the hard decisions coming.
So Mr. Sunak is on the move, leaving the quadrangle, the heart of Buckingham Palace. The outriders leading the way. Central gates are open, and the new Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is on his way to Downing Street. Some applause from the crowd who've gathered there outside the palace. Cars making their way around the memorial and then along the Mall. So it's the same route that they took to come down to the palace earlier, and it is certainly the quickest route and the most direct one. So Mr. Sunak now making his way to Downing Street, where he will be meeting the Cabinet Secretary and other senior officials inside Downing Street. Will be given a security briefing as soon as he's inside, and then they will sit down to get on with the task of forming his government. He'll have thought in great detail, of course, about who he wants in the main jobs. So it'll be a matter of making contact with some of them and in one or two cases possibly persuading people, in others giving them news that they certainly wanted, and in one or two cases, of course, telling people that they're no longer required. So it's a process that can take several hours, but I'd imagine that it won't be long before we get some of the first and the key appointments. And I'd have thought, Nick, that just in terms of stability and the markets and all the rest of it, he might want to be clarifying the role of Chancellor fairly quickly.
I think that's right, and my assumption is that Jeremy Hunt stays as Chancellor, not confirmed yet by Mr. Sunak's team, but that has been the assumption over the last 24 hours or so. There may be some other changes in big jobs, though, that Rishi Sunak has been weighing up this morning. We may see some new cabinet ministers walking up this famous street this afternoon to get into their jobs, because Mr. Sunak wants to do two things. Yes, he wants some of his allies around the cabinet table, but he also has made a big thing about uniting his party, about trying to bring in different parts of the Conservative Party to unite them, to say this isn't just about bringing in people who will be loyal to me, but it's about reflecting different views at the very top of the Conservative Party.
So here we are. We are seeing the approach now to Downing Street. The new Prime Minister on his way. Very shortly will be in Downing Street. Past some of the government offices. The gates have now been opened wide, and we're expecting Rishi Sunak to drive into Downing Street any moment. And of course, when he arrives, he'll be ready to make the statement at the podium which has been erected here. So a very familiar route, and the gates are now opening. Vicky Young is watching for us too, and Vicky underlining the fact here that Mr. Sunak is going to have a very big message to deliver.
Yeah, that's right. I'm in the House of Commons and have been chatting to people for, the last hour or so. And what's really interesting is about the team he's going to put around him. And very unusually, even those very close to him I've spoken to say he has made no promises to anybody. Everyone is in the dark, even those who have spent a lot of time with him over the last few weeks. Now, that's probably a different approach. Lots of people thought he would be maybe giving hints here and there. Hermetically sealed, someone has said to me, is this process has been. Even to the point where Penny Mordaunt, of course, his rival, hasn't been offered a specific job. She, of course, left it very late to drop out. But also lots of those people saying, actually, that's the right thing to do. He's going to make his decisions
Vicky,
about who he wants.
Here's the new Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, approaching with his opening statement of his premiership.
Good morning. Good morning. I've just been to Buckingham Palace and accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government in his name. It is only right to explain why I'm standing here as your new Prime Minister. Right now, our country is facing a profound economic crisis. The aftermath of COVID still lingers. Putin's war in Ukraine has destabilised energy markets and supply chains the world over. I want to pay tribute to my predecessor, Liz Truss. She was not wrong to want to improve growth in this country. It is a noble aim. And I admired her restlessness to create change. But some mistakes were made. Not born of ill will or bad intentions. Quite the opposite, in fact. But mistakes nonetheless. And I have been elected as leader of my party and your Prime Minister, in part, to fix them. And that work begins immediately. I will place economic stability and confidence at the heart of this government's agenda. This will mean difficult decisions to come. But you saw me during COVID doing everything I could to protect people and businesses with schemes like furlough. There are always limits, more so now than ever. But I promise you this, I will bring that same compassion to the challenges we face today. The government I lead will not leave the next generation, your children and grandchildren, with a debt to settle that we were too weak to pay ourselves. I will unite our country, not with words, but with action. I will work day in and day out to deliver for you. This government will have integrity, professionalism, and accountability at every level. Trust is earned, and I will earn yours. I will always be grateful to Boris Johnson for his incredible achievements as Prime Minister, and I treasure his warmth and generosity of spirit. And I know he would agree that the mandate my party earned in 2019 is not the sole property of any one individual. It is a mandate that belongs to and unites all of us. And the heart of that mandate is our manifesto. I will deliver on its promise. A stronger NHS, better schools, safer streets, control of our borders, protecting our environment, supporting our armed forces, levelling up and building an economy that embraces the opportunities of Brexit, where businesses invest, innovate and create jobs. I understand how difficult this moment is. After the billions of pounds it cost us to combat COVID, after all the dislocation that caused, in the midst of a terrible war that must be seen successfully to its conclusions, I fully appreciate how hard things are. And I understand too that I have work to do to restore trust after all that has happened. All I can say is that I am not daunted. I know the high office I have accepted, and I hope to live up to its demands. But when the opportunity to serve comes along, you cannot question the moment, only your willingness. So I stand here before you, ready to lead our country into the future, to put your needs above politics, to reach out and build a government that represents the very best traditions of my party. Together, we can achieve incredible things. We will create a future worthy of the sacrifices so many have made, and fill tomorrow and every day thereafter with hope. Thank you.
So the statement by Mr. Sunak, saying he's not daunted by the enormous task ahead of him, now posing for the traditional photo on the threshold of power, on the threshold of number 10 Downing Street, Prime Minister and First Lord of the Treasury at the age of 42, the youngest Prime Minister of the UK for 200 years, and the first British Asian to achieve the highest office. A statement, one of confidence, one of determination, but insisting that he does understand the pressure that people are feeling out there. Enters number 10 as Prime Minister, with a big round of applause from civil servants and officials and advisors in that traditional way, lining the corridor all the way down to the Cabinet room to greet the new Prime Minister.